Hi everyone, this is Sybil Starr recording a new video for the new moon in Libra, just to give you all a heads up for what this next 28 to 29 days is about. For each new moon plants a seed for what is to flower in the next 28 to 29 days. And that flower is justice. Libra is about justice. But to get to justice, we need to find the injustice. And that is the challenge. The planet Pluto is in a square to this Libra new moon that is seeking justice. And Pluto is the underworld and is also the dark forces. But it's really the darker aspects of our own psyche. And so first off, it is in Capricorn. And Capricorn has to do with our halls of power, our governmental institutions, our corporations, our financial institutions. And they're very vested in keeping things unjust, at least for now. But Pluto, he starts rooting around down there in the dirt and starts digging up the mud and starts exposing what has been lied hidden. The process is now in place. It is moving. Even though we are coming up against obstacles, it is there. Pluto has been in Capricorn for about 6 or 7 years, but prior to that it was in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius has a lot to do with religion. And when Pluto was in Sagittarius is when it uncovered and made public the sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. They did some house cleaning there. And things have improved, although there's so much corruption, it's still in the news and still being done. And so Pluto is in the midst of the middle of its time in Capricorn. It's got about 7 or 8 more years left there. And actually, let me see, what is it? How long is it? It's actually 6 more years. So it's been there, I think, maybe 8 years. And so we're in the midst of the process of house cleaning, and we're kind of like dug through the mud, and we're starting to see what lies underneath it, and it's not a pretty picture. But this is in process, and it is moving, as ugly as it is. The other piece of what is happening is the ruler of the sign Libra is Venus, the goddess Venus, the planet Venus. And Venus is in Scorpio right now and has been for a while, and she's turning retrograde on Saturday. So Venus in Scorpio, she just doesn't put up with a whole lot of crap. She is not one to be crossed. She can be a very fierce entity, and she is here. And by turning retrograde, what that means is that she appears to move backwards in the sky, even though she's really not. She looks that way. And what that means astrologically is, and symbolically, is that she's moving backwards in our own psyche, and she's doing some house cleaning because she's ruled by that planet Pluto. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. So there is a big connection here. It's being said in more than one way that we're doing some deep roto-rooter house cleaning. And the goal is justice. The goal is balance. What is fair and just, and what is truth? It's also a quest for the truth. The word, the concept of justice comes from the Egyptian concept of ma'at, and which means the right order of things, truth and justice. And her symbol is also the scales. Just as in Egyptian cosmology, when the person dies, their heart is weighed on the scales of ma'at, and it can't be any heavier than her feather and it is the feather of truth, and it is the feather of justice. So we are seeking that right now, but there is a lot of house cleaning that needs to be done in the outer world, as well as when Venus is moving into the inner world. She's also looking at doing house cleaning within our own psyches. And so we have seen what has come up in the last few weeks of what is being triggered first in the collective unconscious and in our own unconscious, because Venus is, and Scorpio is journeying down into the unconscious realms and the memories that we carry. And she is being activated by the planet Mars. Venus is a universal symbol for women, or for the feminine, let's put it that way, for the feminine. Mars is the universal symbol for the masculine, and that walks in many different kinds of bodies, but it is that energy. And so in a square to Mars in his most positive side is the protector, the defender, action and truth, and our direction in life. In his more negative side, it has to do with anger, conflict, and violence. And also Mars also is one of the aspects that represents sexuality. So does Venus, and so does Venus in Scorpio. So there's a lot here around our sexuality that's being triggered. Mars is also in aspect to conjunct the south node of the moon. And the south node of the moon, I can't really go into detail of what it means right here generally, or put it this way, astronomically. But what it actually means is that it has to do with our past, our soul's past, our memories, and our karma. And so it's like our collective karma is coming into consciousness now. It's being triggered in a way that it hasn't been before. Well, at least for right now, it's what is very present for each of us right now. And so that is why there are so many memories being triggered and coming up, because it's like a wound that needs to be healed. It needs to be drained. And so all of these things are coming up for healing, and it is being drained on a personal and a collective level, which needs to happen. And I believe another thing that it is asking of us, as we are going deeply within our own psyche, to understand that when the wound is healed, out of it comes tremendous anger. That is part of the grieving process. It is part of the healing process, and that fury needs to come up. And it is sacred, and it is holy. And we're not talking about revenge. We're talking about true, honest emotion, and how to use that emotion to propel us forward to create a different world for our children and especially our daughters, but for our sons too. Absolutely, for both of them, where there is a more just world for men and women and all people to live together. And it seems there is another piece of this that is wanting to come up in our quest for justice. It is setting boundaries. Is where do we say no? When is the time we stop letting ourselves be abused? On the collective level, as well as personally, where do we say no? Enough is enough. And that it is time to balance the scales in our own relationships, first off in our own hearts. Is believing and trusting ourselves enough to believe we have that value and worth, which is what Venus retrograde in Scorpio is another piece, taking us deeper into really what is our value. Are we worth fighting for? Are our children, our daughters and our sons worth fighting for a different world? But it is on a deepest level, it's about our self-worth, and how we, in many ways, have let ourselves be abused personally and collectively, and times are changing. And as we are able to speak these wounds and to release what we've been holding, we can use this holy anger to propel us forward to where we draw the line in our outer world where we're saying no. But it does start in the inner world, in our own relationships, of where we looking at where we are out of balance in our own relationships and saying no, that it may be time to renegotiate, to talk about what isn't working. And as we do this in our personal world, it gives us the courage to go into the outer world and do the same thing and say no. And this is what needs to happen, is to take that holy anger and to remember that the last day of this lunar cycle is election day. And so we take that passion, that quest for justice, and at where we're drawing the line and saying no and coming out in massive numbers to vote. And to remember too that there are more women and people of color running for office than at any other time. And for us to have balance in our institution, especially our government, there needs to be it needs to look like the constituents. It's not all white males. California just passed a law saying that a woman has to be on the board of every corporation from now on, for ones that are incorporated here in California. So these are the things. So there is change. It is happening. But to know that we have to have the desire and the courage to take the action, and to know that as we release what we have been holding, that it's time to move forward, to balance those scales of Ma'at. And as Rick Tarnas, as a very famous astrologer, says, we are moving through the eye of the needle to shift into higher levels of consciousness. But we have to come into integrity, into alignment with our own truth to pass through that eye. And this is one of the pieces that is out of alignment. And so this is why I feel it's so intense right now, and it's such a turning point. And just to remember too, even if we lose some battles, we need to keep moving forward in our quest for truth and justice and love, because it is all based in love, and that really is the truth of it. And as in the Egyptian cosmology, when we die, that our heart can't weigh more than the feather of truth, and that truth is based in love. And that is what changes everything, as that our holy anger is in service to love and to making this world a better place. Aho, and thank you.